So you guys like binge watch Netflix ever? Nobody. Wow. Such liars. This is 2018 and you guys are in high school. That means I know that at some point in your life you've at least been on Netflix or at least watched a TV show on Netflix. But my point is I've noticed a common theme in a lot of television shows, especially like comedy shows, like incompetent bosses or incompetent teachers or parents, just goofy dads that don't really seem to have a grip on life or what's going on in the home. You guys know what I'm talking about, those characters? Like think about Michael Scott on The Office. Like doesn't really seem to have a grip on what's going on. I'm gonna throw it back to Lizzie McGuire. Anybody know about Lizzie McGuire? Anybody? You guys know Sam McGuire, Lizzie's dad. He's kind of a goofball. It seems like every scene with him, there's some kind of like doing noise that happens because he did something that was less than intelligent. In TV shows, that's really funny because it's pretty relatable, right? We have silly bosses. We have bad teachers or coaches that don't really seem to know a thing about basketball or whatever your situation may be. It's relatable to us. And it's funny when we watch it on TV, but when we stop and think about that situation in real life, it's kind of a bummer, right? It's not really that funny. Last week we talked about honoring bosses and authority, and the whole premise of it was life is better when you honor the boss, right? I'm sure you guys remember that. I'm sure you've been thinking about it all week, and you've been praying and just working on that. I say that semi-sarcastically, but also kind of hopeful. Like I really hope that you guys have been thinking about that. We're going to continue the discussion tonight about honoring our bosses. So maybe last week in your small group, or as you were hopefully thinking about it throughout the week, you're like, okay, life's better when you honor the boss, but what if my boss is a goof? What if my boss is a terrible boss? What if my teacher's horrible? What if they're lazy or irresponsible? What if they're disrespectful to me? What if they're wrong? What if I just don't like them, right? Does God still want me to honor a bad boss? Have you asked yourself that question before? Like, does God really want me to honor this guy? Like, for reals? Does God really want me to obey my parents when it doesn't seem like what they're telling me to do is the right thing to do? Maybe more specifically, maybe you thought, well, maybe I can be a little bit disrespectful. Like, I can listen to them, but kind of just make fun of them behind their back and it'll be good, right? I'm still listening, I'm still being obedient, but I'm still going to make fun of them behind their back, right? Maybe you didn't ask yourself to make that conscious decision, but maybe that's just something that you do. Maybe that's just something you struggle with, all right? Those are good questions, fair questions, questions I've wrestled with, questions I ask myself sometimes today. But here's the deal. Yes, you still have to honor those people, okay? Just flat out truth. You still have to honor bad bosses. Like God still calls you to be respectful to authority that is not that great at being authoritative. God does give us a good place to start in Scripture when it comes to situations like that. All right, so we're going to go to Colossians 3:23. And this is important because we're always going to have, we said it last week, we're always going to have someone in authority over us, right? We're always going to have someone to answer to. And that person may not always be that great. So I think it's important to especially in high school, to get a grip on it and to begin to work on this, to work on respecting authority even when they don't seem to deserve it. So like I said, we're going to be in Colossians 3:23. This is a letter written by Paul, and you got to remember, Paul's like the stud of Christianity. He's like the guy, if you're not going to be like Jesus, be like Paul, basically. All right? He risked his life to share the word of Christ, and he actually ended up dying for doing it. So we can trust that what he's saying is important, and what he's saying is good. Not to mention, it's in the Bible, and so we can trust that it's the authoritative word of God, right? So Colossians 3:23 says, whatever you do, work at it with all your heart, as if working for the Lord, not for human masters. So right out of the gate, Paul's saying, think about working for the Lord, right? He's saying, you're working for the Lord, not for human masters. Whatever you do, work at it with all your heart, because you're working for the Lord. You're not working for your good boss or your bad boss or your good teacher or your bad teacher or your bad parents. You're working for the Lord. So he comes at it pretty hard. And that honestly could be the whole Bible study tonight. Well, we could just end there, and that would be a challenge enough. We're going to continue because I think you guys are capable of more. He's basically saying no matter how good or bad your authority is, you should picture yourself working for God instead. That's actually kind of simple, right? Right? Okay, my parent wants me to do this, or my teacher wants me to do this. God is actually saying do this. I'm working for the Lord, right? But what if it's still from a bad boss? Like, well, what if they are still kind of wrong, or what if it doesn't make sense, or what if I don't like it? Well, here's the deal. It's not about they. It's not about your boss. What Paul is saying is it's about you and your relationship with God. It's between you and the Lord. Like, forget your boss. Forget your teacher. Forget your parent. It's about you and the Lord, right? When it comes down to it, it is about you and your obedience to God. Because your obedience to your earthly authority is your obedience to God. So the working hard part, that's your role, okay? It has nothing to do with whether your authority is wise or foolish, and that's important to understand. It's freeing to understand that, because you don't have to worry about if your authority is wise or foolish, because you're not working for them, you're working for the Lord, right? So it gets better, actually. I'm going to say that, okay? He goes on. He says, whatever you do, work at it with all your heart as working for the Lord, not for human masters, since you know that you will receive an inheritance from the Lord as a reward. It is the Lord Christ you are serving. Anyone who does wrong will be repaid for their wrongs, and there is no favoritism. So there's two parts there, right? He promises an inheritance from the Lord. So we can trust that the work that we're doing, God's taking note of it. He's taking note of your heart on the matter. He's taking note of your obedience. And there's an inheritance that's promised. And that's good. That should give us encouragement, some motivation. If working for the Lord isn't enough motivation for you, hey, there's an inheritance. I don't know what that inheritance is. I think the joy of the Lord comes with that. I think the Lord's going to bless you in your work. I think the Lord's going to honor your obedience to Him. He's going to prop you up. It's going to be good, so you can trust that. But also, He's taking note of your leaders. He's taking note of the people in authority over you. The second half of that verse says, anyone who does wrong will be repaid for their wrongs, and there is no favoritism. So He's aware of everything that your leaders are doing. Any poor treatment that you get, God sees it. Now, I'm not saying that we should just be like, oh yeah, the Lord's going to get vengeance on them. Like, I'm just going to sit back and wait. Like, that's my motivation. God's going to take care of them. Like, that's kind of a crusty heart to have. I'm not saying to focus on that, but I am saying you can trust that God's going to take care of you in that situation. Hopefully, through your obedience, God does a work in your leader's life. And that person that, hey, this guy's got an example of Christ, and I've noticed that, and I'm going to change my heart by the example that, Joel has said, just by being a great student, right? So the whole point tonight I want to focus on is control what you can and trust God with what you can't. Now, when I first read that, I was like, wait a second, control what I can? Isn't God like all powerful? Can I control anything? And I kind of questioned it for a second, and then I realized, hey, I have free will. I can control my actions, and that's what this is talking about. Control what you can. So what can you control? Your response to your leaders, right? You can't control the decisions being made. You can't control how your obedience plays out, but you can control whether or not you obey. You can control whether or not you backtalk or talk bad behind your leader's back, and you can control your attitude in obedience, right? So that's the focus. Control what you can and trust God with what you can't. Now I'm going to kind of switch gears, step to the side, and talk about one other thing. So in Acts 4:19 through 20, Peter and John, they get arrested, they get caught. So Jesus, he's gone to the cross, he's come back, he's left, he's up in heaven, he's doing his thing. The apostles are on earth, they're trying to figure out how to run a church, basically. Peter and John, they're out sharing the gospel. They get caught by some leaders and officials, like leaders of an entire country, like important people. And before them, they tell Peter and John, hey, quit preaching the gospel. You need to quit sharing the word of Christ. Okay, and this is their response. Do you think God wants us to obey you rather than him? We cannot stop telling about everything we have seen and heard. So in other words, they're like, sorry, chief, no can do, right? Like, we can't do that. We can't help but share about what we've seen and heard Jesus do, and that means we're going to be in disobedience to our leaders. That's contradictory to what we've been talking about, right? We've been talking about honoring even bad leaders, so that gets a little confusing, a little tricky. Sometimes following Jesus is a little tricky. It's not always black and white. So I'm going to touch up on this. First of all, very rarely and thankfully will we be in situations where we're pushed so far as to have to disobey our leaders in order to honor Christ. Okay? I hope you're never in a situation where your leaders are asking you to act immorally or against what Scripture would teach. But there may be cases where you're asked to do something that's pretty wrong or pretty evil. And if it doesn't sit well with you, there is a way to handle it. And I would encourage you first, before you make that decision, talk to your leaders. Like, we have small groups here and Sunday school classes and youth workers and all this good stuff to help you guys through situations just like that, right? So I wouldn't say just go make a flippant decision on the fly and be like, sorry, but I can't obey you. Like, let's talk about it first and let's see if there's a way to act in obedience and continue to honor Christ. But if not, there's a way to honor your leaders but still disobey, all right? So I think saying, I have no intent to disrespect you, but I can't follow you there. I can't do what you're asking me. I'm sorry, ma'am. I'm sorry, sir. I want to respect you, but I just can't do that, right? And then see what happens from there. But like I said, thankfully, we're not going to probably be in very many situations like that in life. I've never been in a situation like that, and I'm crusty and old, so. But again, it falls back on control what you can and trust God with what you can't. So if you are in a situation, though, we're going to wrap it up here. If you are in a situation where your leaders just aren't that great, maybe it's at home, maybe it's your parents, maybe it's your teachers at school, maybe it's a boss at work or a coach. If you're in a situation where they're just not that great, where they are disrespectful to you, or they call you out wrongfully, or where they are lazy or irresponsible, man, I'm really sorry. I really am. I hate that for you. But there's a few application steps that we can take tonight, I think, to help get through that, to help navigate forward. And the first thing is just to forgive. That's a huge thing. If you can learn to forgive your leaders for their wrongdoings, oh my gosh, so much freedom. It's hard to obey and respect somebody that you're harboring ill will against, that you're bitter towards. So first step is forgiveness. You got to remember, not everybody's perfect, and nobody's perfect, right? Scripture talks about forgiving like an infinite amount of times. And as Christians, we've been called to do that, right? If we've been forgiven, we've got to forgive others. So that's the first step. The second thing is to be responsible. Being irresponsible never helps. I don't know anybody who's ever was like, yeah, I was a horrible employee and I'm the boss now. Go figure. Usually makes your situation worse. So even if your parents are treating you poorly, or even if your teachers are doing you wrong, be responsible in how you handle them. Be responsible in your work. Be responsible with your responsibilities. Because it's going to pay off. It's going to help you out, okay? If you're irresponsible, it's just going to make the situation a lot worse. And the last thing is to lead up. And what I mean by that is your leaders might not act like adults, They might not act like people who are qualified for the position, but it doesn't mean that you can't act like an adult. It doesn't mean that you can't act like somebody who's qualified for the position. Like, you can still be an example to your leaders. All right, so I'm going to challenge you to that. So even when your authority figures aren't meeting that standard, I'm going to challenge you to meet that standard. Be like Christ in that situation and see if they don't match you. All right? And again, if they don't step up to the plate and start leading well, not on you, right? You're going to control what you can. So yeah, so that's the whole thing. Control what you can and trust God with what you can't. So I'm going to pray and then we'll go to small groups. Father, thank you for tonight. Thank you, man, for using Paul to write so many encouraging words to us. And Lord, I pray tonight that as we go to small groups, we would begin to wrestle with this idea of obeying and being respectful to people that really don't seem to deserve it. I pray that if we're in a situation like that, that you would challenge our hearts. Lord, help us recognize that we're really working for you and not for our human masters. I pray that we would get that in our minds, and that would just drive everything else that we do. Father, I pray for good discussion in small groups. I pray for walls to be broken down if there's anything built up, and just an encouraging time together. We love you. In your name we pray these things. Amen.